Welcome. Listen, if you're a new parent, a grandparent, or a caregiver, you already know that feeding an infant can feel like this high stakes puzzle, right? Especially when you're running on like 2 hours of sleep and your brain literally feels like mashed peas. It is totally normal to feel completely overwhelmed by all the conflicting advice out there. But today we're cutting through the noise. This explainer is going to completely demystify infant formula feeding, and we're using clear, grounded facts straight from the CDC, the FDA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and Pampers. So take a deep breath, you've absolutely got this, and we're going to walk through it together. Here's the roadmap for what we're going to cover today. 1. Why choose commercial formula? 2. The dangers of homemade. 3. Safe formula preparation steps. 4. Protecting vulnerable infants. And 5. Formula storage and freshness. I promise you a comprehensive toolkit that moves perfectly from the fundamental why to the practical how, so you can build your confidence with every single bottle.
Section 1. Commercial formula. Why it matters.
Now, you might be wondering, why not just use cow's milk? It's an incredibly common question. Parents often think, hey, why can't I just skip the expensive formula entirely and go straight to regular cow's milk? I mean, people have been drinking it for centuries, right? It seems like a logical shortcut, for sure. But science tells us a very different story when it comes to a newborn's developing body. Okay, let's dive into this. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, infants simply cannot digest cow's milk as completely or as easily as breast milk or formula. But the bigger issue here is the actual nutrient makeup. Cow's milk has incredibly high concentrations of protein and minerals. For a tiny newborn, these high levels actually put a massive amount of stress on their immature kidneys. And that can cause severe illness if your baby gets a fever or diarrhea or heat stress. Plus, cow's milk severely lacks the essential iron and vitamin C that babies need to thrive. And the proteins can actually irritate the delicate lining of the infant's stomach. This irritation can cause blood loss, which leads to iron deficiency anemia. It's a dangerous domino effect. Commercial infant formula, on the other hand, is strictly regulated to provide complete, balanced nutrition that perfectly mimics exactly what a baby needs in a form their tiny bodies can easily process. Section 2. Homemade dangers. Risks of homemade recipes. So if regular cow's milk is out, what about making your own at home? You've probably seen recipes floating around the internet claiming to be a natural or cheaper workaround. Well, the FDA's stance on this is absolute. To quote them directly, the FDA strongly advises parents and caregivers not to make and feed their infants homemade infant formulas. Commercial formula is heavily regulated to ensure exact minimum levels of vital nutrients. Homemade recipes, they just haven't been evaluated by the experts, which means you are essentially rolling the dice with your infant's growth and safety. To really understand why the FDA issues such a strong warning, we have to look at the severe risks. The absence of critical nutrients isn't just a minor hiccup. It can be absolutely devastating. In fact, the FDA has received actual adverse event reports of hospitalized infants suffering from hypocalcemia, which is dangerously low calcium, simply because they were fed homemade formula. Add to that the severe risk of foodborne illnesses from contamination during the mixing process, and you have consequences that can quite literally be life-threatening. The takeaway here is incredibly simple. Absolutely never DIY your baby's primary source of nutrition.
Section 3. Safe preparation, step-by-step guide.
Now that we understand the high stakes, let's shift to high confidence. Let's walk through the critical CDC guidelines for prepping a safe bottle. Step 1. Wash your hands thoroughly. Before you even grab a bottle. Step 2. Clean your workspace and sanitize the bottle itself. Step 3. Measure your water first. And Step 4. Add the powder formula. It sounds basic, I know, but mastering this exact sequence is your frontline defense against contamination. Notice the specific order of operations there. You must always measure the water first. Why? Well, it's all about displacement. If you put the powder in first, the volume gets displaced, and you're going to end up with the wrong amount of water. If you use too much water, you dilute the nutrients, so your baby isn't getting what they need to grow. If you use too little water, the concentrated formula will force your baby's kidneys and digestive system to work way too hard, leading to dangerous dehydration. So always measure the water first. Here is another absolutely crucial safety step. Never use a microwave to warm a bottle. No way. I know it's super tempting when the baby's screaming and you're in a rush, but microwaves heat liquid unevenly. This creates hidden hot spots in the milk that can severely burn your baby's mouth and throat, even if the outside of the bottle feels totally cool in your hand. Instead, the safe alternative is to just run the bottle under warm, running water, making sure no water gets on the actual nipple, and then test a couple of drops on your wrist. It should feel gently warm, not hot. Section 4. Vulnerable infants, extra precautions needed. Okay, so standard preparation is usually perfectly fine, but some babies really need an extra layer of protection. The CDC specifically categorizes three groups of infants as highly vulnerable to bacterial infections: babies younger than 2 months old, premature infants born before 37 weeks, and any infant with a weakened immune system. If your little one falls into one of these categories, standard prep just isn't quite enough. We need to take extra precautions. To understand why, we need to talk about the specific unseen threat we're trying to neutralize. It's called Chronobacter. It's a rare but incredibly serious bacteria that can actually survive in totally dry environments. And yep, that includes inside sealed containers of powdered infant formula. Because powdered formula is actually not a sterile product, these highly vulnerable babies could get very sick if they consume it without it being properly prepared to kill this specific germ. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why standard tap water won't cut it here. To neutralize Chronobacter, you must boil the water to 158 degrees Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius. Let it sit for about 5 minutes, mix it with the powdered formula while it's still hot to kill the bacteria, and then carefully let it cool down to a safe temperature before you feed your baby. Testing it on your wrist is absolutely essential here so you don't accidentally burn them. This high heat mixing is exactly what eliminates the bacteria. Section 5. Storage and freshness, keeping formulas safe. All right, we've mixed the bottle perfectly. Now let's talk about safely storing it. Understanding the timeline of a mixed bottle is crucial. Once you mix formula, it can sit at room temperature for a maximum of 2 hours. But, and this is a huge but, once your baby actually starts drinking from that bottle, the clock drops to just 1 hour. Why? Because the bacteria from your baby's saliva mixes into the bottle and it can grow incredibly fast. If there is leftover milk after an hour, you've got to dump it. Now, if you mix a fresh bottle and immediately pop it in the back of the fridge where it's coldest, it's totally safe to use for up to 24 hours. 1 month. That is the absolute maximum shelf life of an open container of powdered formula. Unopened, it lasts until the expiration date, obviously. But the second you pop that seal, the clock starts ticking. Actually, here's a fantastic pro tip from Pampers. Grab a permanent marker and write the exact opening date directly on the lid. That way, sleep deprivation won't trick you into accidentally feeding your baby stale or degraded formula. Also, remember to store that open container in a cool, dry place indoors. Never in the fridge, and definitely never out in a hot car. Which brings us to the ultimate golden rule of food safety for infants. When in doubt, throw it out. Seriously, never feed your baby expired formula, and never buy or use containers that have leaks, bulges, dents, or rusty spots. If you've lost track of how long a bottle has been sitting out on the kitchen counter, just don't risk it. It is always, always safest to just prepare a fresh bottle. And there you have it. We've officially replaced the guesswork with hard facts. From choosing commercial formula and avoiding DIY disasters, to mastering those CDC prep steps, protecting vulnerable newborns, and nailing strict freshness timelines, you now have the complete toolkit for safe feeding. So as we wrap up this explainer, I leave you with this question. How will you use these foolproof steps to protect your baby during their very next bottle? Thanks so much for joining me, and stay empowered.